Hi. Well, I had a decent amount of fines today. I just got home. When I go out and leave my house empty, giving away some security secrets here, but I leave the radio going inside the house so that it sounds like someone's home. Not that was going to stop any criminal, but and so when I come home, there's this music always going. And when I just came home, then it was the Mike and the Mechanic song, "The Living Years," if you're familiar with that. Mike being Mike Rutherford from Genesis, his kind of side project, his solo band. And if you listen to the lyrics of that, it's quite a sad song. Like, it's also quite cheesy. Like, they were kind of considered to be like one of the most uncool, cheesy bands of that era. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's quite a touching song about his dad who died. Anyway, so I went up to another area north of where I live, and I visited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stores. Only found things in one of them. So eight of the stores, there was nothing. Well, actually, there were a few things that I was kind of on the fence about getting, but I didn't. But regardless, I only bought them at one store. So let's go through these. I think there's some pretty decent finds here. Not things that I've never really seen around before. First one, ACDC. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap from the Bon Scott era. Now, this looks like it's some sort of remaster. So it's on EMI. So we're seeing Albert Productions, J. Albert and Son. Well, I don't know what that is. Is that? That's the studio they were in. I don't know. Anyway, this looks like it's a 1995 reissue of this. What is it? 1976, the original. 1976. Obviously, a bit of a classic, this one, if you like ACDC at least. I'm not the hugest ACDC fan. I like ACDC in the way that everyone likes ACDC. Like, ACDC is ACDC. And however, part of their charm, I guess, is that they've always sounded the same. But that's also part of their, I don't know, not downfall, I don't know the word, but quite part of the reason why I only like them in small doses. Because if I was listening to like 3 albums of theirs on end, it would be a bit much, because it would be a bit repetitive. So there we've got the disc, a tattoo. Let's look at the booklet. Looks to be in reasonable condition. That's the cover work that I'm familiar with. I think that is the cover artwork. And they've just folded it incorrectly. That's the back one, yes. Bon Scott and Angus Young. Because on this side, it's Phil Rudd and Malcolm Young and whoever their bass player was before Clive. What's his name? Clive Burr? Was it Cliff or Clive? He didn't come in till around Highway to Hell? Or was it Back in Black? Can't remember, but he don't know who was Evans, was it Mel Evans? That name rings a bell for some reason. I can see if I can find their names. Young and Scott. Young and Scott. It's all Young and Scott. They have the writing credits. And there isn't any liner notes whatsoever about who's in the band. Maybe on the back here. Oops. No, all songs written by Young and Scott. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that works. Like, maybe because this would have been 76 is relatively early in their career. maybe they had a record deal, a small record deal with a local label in Australia called Albert Productions, because it seems that was the name of the studio as well, recorded at Albert Studios in Sydney. And then later they got picked up by EMI, and this was remastered and reissued in the 90s under both labels, perhaps. Anyway, pretty happy to have that. I'm going to do this out of order because the next one is another ACDC, Akadaka, TNT. Now, what year did TNT come out? Was that before or after? 75. So this was before Dirty Deeds. It's a long way to the top. Another kind of classic. This one also recorded at Albert Studios. Also produced by Vanda and Young. Also published by J. Albert and Son. I'm not seeing any EMI label on this one. Just hang on, this might not be a reissue. We've got oh no, it is. Sorry, 95. So we've got 75 and then the 95. I actually have no idea about. This one's on Warner. What was this? EMI Warner. Who knows? I have no idea about ACDC's record label, who they've been with over the years, and I'm not that big enough of a fan to kind of be au fait with all that kind of stuff. So we got Malcolm, Bon, 5'3", you know, the Young brothers famously short asses. 5'6", he's not too big either. He's about the same height as my wife. Mark Evans, not Mal Evans. Mark Evans was the former bass player before Cliff/Clive Burr. Burr? Is it Burr? I might be wrong on that as well. I've got a feeling that Burr was some guy in Iron Maiden or something. Getting with bloody 70s rock bands mixed up and 70s, 80s rock bands. I'll look while I'm looking. And then down here we got Angus McKinnon Young. And what's Malcolm's middle name? Joe's no middle name. Maybe he does one, just doesn't want to say it. Complexion acneed. Distinguishing features pug face. Alias slob hand. Slob hand, lazy fingers. Slob hand, I don't know, maybe people say lazy fingers, but slob hand, no way. One of the greatest rhythm guitarists, the tightest rhythm guitarist in rock history, according to many people. And I've kind of come to appreciate his playing myself, learning a bit of guitar over the years. What was I looking at? I forgot what I'm even looking up now. What was I looking up? I completely forgot what I was meant to be looking at. I was bloody talking about that. Fuck, who cares? Luna, what does that mean? Moon-faced? Tattoos, film, teeth. Oh, that's why I was looking at the ACDC bassist. Jeez. Come on. ACDC discography, that's not what I want, but it's ACDC band members. Cliff Williams. I was saying Clive Burr. Who the fuck is Clive Burr or Cliff Burr? I think Clive Burr, he was in, was it like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or something? Let's have a, who's Clive Burr? What Burr? English drummer. Go back. God damn it. Clive Burr. English drummer in Iron Maiden. I was right. See, at least I was vaguely, at least I knew to check my inaccuracies, right? That's something, surely. Complexion fair, complexion pimpling. Anyway, that is, well, there's old Phil Rudd, complexion fair. Lives in New Zealand, Phil Rudd. Was arrested a few years, well not a few, probably about 10 years ago for threatening to have someone assassinated and methamphetamine possession and a few other things. Kind of went off the deep end there, but the thing is, I think he's kind of come back to normalcy. He lives down Tauranga, or Tauranga, as is the correct pronunciation. And for number 3 of Akadaka, Stiff Upper Lip, which is from 99, I'm going to guess. No year on here, of course, so how can I... Let's see if there's a year on here. 2000. 2004? Well, let's have a look on this. I'm sure it was earlier than that. Ball Breaker was, what, 96? Album. So Hiver, Back in Black, Ball Breaker 95, Stiff Upper Lip. Okay, February 2000. February 2000. That's also put out under the Albert Productions label. And does it have any other? This seems strange. This doesn't seem right, if you know what I mean. These look slightly off-brand or something. There's something not right about them. So, well, it is like some sort of like bootlegs or something. So this says it was put out. Okay, they say Albert, East, West, and Elektra. So Albert is one of them. And I guess maybe it depends on which market you're in, is which label puts it out. It just seems strange to have such a massive band like ACDC and not seeing any sort of major label logo on it anywhere, even as a kind of a distributor. It's doesn't look normal. I was going to have a look up and see if I could see, but I don't know. I haven't played any of them yet because I only just got home. I didn't play them in the car because I was listening to something else. That looks normal enough. Like in some ways they look completely normal. Like that looks, of that era, the 70s era, even though these were reissued in the 90s. I've got an ACDC album. I've got Black Ice. Actually, I can't bother going and do it because there'll be 20 seconds of silence while you're out of the room. I guess, yeah. Anyway. Those three, $1 each. Obviously, there was one other ACDC thing. There was a double live ACDC album there. Didn't get that because I know I'm never ever going to listen to that. Very rarely that I like a band enough to want their live album, unless it's like a legendary live album. Even if it's a band I really like, I would probably be a bit iffy on getting live albums because I've talked about it before. It's just the same songs, but often worse. Every now and then you'll get something with like an interesting performance or an interesting take on a song, but yeah. Obviously, an AC/DC fan or the family of an AC/DC fan had gone and dropped these off in the Salvation Army store where I bought them from. They were sitting on top of the shelves where the other CDs are. So they've been kind of stacked right on top as though someone had just put them out. So I was relatively lucky to come across them. 3 more, not AC/DC. This is something I've kind of wanted for a long time, in as much as I like Chris Cornell and I have never listened to this solo album of his. And you don't see it a lot. You can see this was bought at Borders bookstore. Now, I've talked about Borders before. There used to be a huge Borders bookstore in the central city of Auckland. It was like 4 levels. It was like unlike anything else that we had in our country, because typically New Zealand doesn't really do those super mega stores because we don't have the population to support such a large retail space. And books aren't massive money generators. This was back 20 years ago. It closed in about 2011. It's been closed for almost 15 years now. But anyway, they had a huge book section and a huge music section. And the music section was really good because they had a lot of imports that you couldn't find anywhere else. But it was a very weird selection of stuff they had in stock. It didn't really seem to follow any rhyme or reason. Like say if you went to, like Fugazi, they wouldn't have any of the Fugazi albums you would expect but then they'd have two really rare ones or something like that, or and the prices were very all over the show as well. Anyway, this was obviously purchased at least 14 years ago. When was this released? 2007? Man, I'm good at this, how I do that. 2007. I think I've got a talent for when albums come out, because more often than not, I'm within a year or two, right on the money. See, the original price was $34.99. Did they have a date anywhere? No. $34.99, which is a pretty typical CD price, in the early 2000s, late 2000s. Came down and was on special for $26.99. Great price. You get almost, what's that, $9 off, $8 off. And this is a special edition, apparently. Now, Chris Cornell's solo stuff, I've made a video very early in the history of this channel on Euphoria Morning. Euphoria Morning is a great album. It took a long time for me to truly appreciate it. When it first came out and I bought it back in 1999, that was in a period where Soundgarden, I've talked about this before as well, Soundgarden were my number one favorite band as a teenager. And still today, they're up there. It's kind of hard to say your favorite band. You don't really say that as in that, it's my favorite band. It's kind of like a childish thing to say, but they're certainly one of my favorite bands. Super Unknown is 100% in my top 5 albums of all time. I idolized that band and Chris Cornell. I saw them in concert in 1997, very early 97, just before they broke up at the Big Day Out Festival in Auckland. I was quite bummed or whatever, I was disappointed when they broke up. I remember I cut out the newspaper clipping and stuck it on my wall. I had Soundgarden t-shirts, multiple Soundgarden t-shirts. I owned their albums on CD and cassette. And when they broke up, I was really interested to see what happened next. Back in this time in the late 90s, music, news, the internet was not as, not as common as it is nowadays. And so music news moved a lot slower. You would hear things in magazines or on TV sometimes or on the radio. And so I can't remember how I heard that Euphoria Morning was coming out, but I really wanted to hear it. I think I bought it on the first day it was released. Before it was released, I'd heard the single Change the World, or Can't Change Me, I think it was called. And I thought, it's okay. It's kind of, you can see the linear movement from Down on the Upside to that. But then when I heard the rest of the album literally as an 18-year-old, because that's how old I was, it wasn't rock enough. It was quite mellow and melancholic and man with an acoustic guitar type stuff. And so in some ways it kind of disappointed me a bit. And over the years, I kind of slowly came around to it. And now I love that album. It's an amazing, amazing album. There are songs on that I like as much as any Soundgarden song. Then he went into Audio Slave, and Audio Slave I'm kind of always a little bit mixed on. I kind of lost track, I guess, after that. You kind of grew up and started getting interested in more other kinds of music, and I kind of lost that hero worship of Chris Cornell. And so I wasn't really keeping track of what he was doing solo career-wise. I know he released that album Scream, which I've only ever heard one song of. Can't remember the name of it. The one that's got one of the Klitschko brothers in the video. Not My Style or something. I don't know. The main single off the album. Not my kind of music. As Trent Reznor said about it, embarrassing. And obviously, Chris Cornell is an artist and is free to make artistic decisions and do what he wants to do. But as someone who was a fan of his, I was like, why would you do that? Then he went on to more this kind of stuff. Again, I may have heard one or two songs off this thing, but not really. Okay, so this is just kind of the line and the credits on the back, and that's just the track listing on the front. I'm trying to see which song I might recognize. Will Never Be Your Man. Obviously, the Billie Jean cover. It doesn't do it for me, those things. Like, people kind of go gaga over his covers of Billie Jean and Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor, and maybe some other covers. That kind of vocal acrobatics, that was never the reason why I like Chris Cornell. He's got an amazing voice, but kind of, there's very few vocalists where I like, because I think, wow, listen what he's doing with his voice. The voice has to be part of the song. Maybe Jeff Buckley might be one of them. But even though it's not, actually, anyway, I kind of, that didn't blow me away or anything at all. I kind of listened to that once and just kind of like, So I'm not sure what the rest of this is going to sound like. Not sure what kind of reviews this got. Who are these people? Are these the people who played on it? Cornell creator Lucas Ray Mosley. I wonder if that Lucas is Gary Lucas. Well, obviously Lucas is a common surname, but Gary Lucas played and wrote together with Jeff Buckley on the Grace album, and he obviously Chris Cornell was quite close to Gary Lucas. To Jeff Buckley. Fucking hell, sorry. It is Gary Lucas. Look. If you go on YouTube, you can see Gary Lucas playing some of those songs on Grace, like the song Grace and Mojo Pin. He was in some prog rock band. Maybe it was a Captain Beefheart or something like that. Or King Crimson. Anyway, if you know the story of Jeff Buckley, when Jeff Buckley was first kind of getting into his solo career, he worked together with Gary Lucas, and Gary Lucas kind of wanted to release music with Jeff as his frontman, kind of, but Jeff didn't want to be that. He wanted to do his own thing, and so they kind of had a falling out in some ways. But the guitar, like I think it's on Grace, Gary Lucas' guitar is credited as ghostly guitars. And if you like it, for example, on Mojo Pin, the first song on Grace, that very, very first part where the song first starts, and there's that kind of very low in the mix. I don't even know how to describe it, guitar noise before Jeff's voice comes in. That's Gary Lucas. And then the same thing on Grace, the kind of, like it says, ghostly guitars type sounds. That's apparently Gary Lucas added that. And so it's very interesting to see that he worked here with Chris Cornell. Because like I said, Jesus, going around in circles here. Chris Cornell was friends with Jeff Buckley. I don't think they are an amazing friends, but I know speaking of Euphoria Morning, the song Wave Goodbye, I think, was written by Chris Cornell about Jeff Buckley, like a tribute to him after he died. That kind of made me more interested now to listen, to hear what it sounds like, because Gary Lucas is someone who, well, I only know him from Grace, but that's such an amazing album that it kind of makes me interested to hear what this might be about. Now, I don't know how many other albums he released after this, Chris Cornell, but I know the last one he released, Higher Truth, before he died, it had a single, Nearly Forgot My Broken Heart. I really like that song. And interestingly, I just started listening to that song about 3 months before he died in 2017. It was right around the time when my son was born. And that song, they've taken the video down on YouTube, but the original video of that, Chris in the video, it's like a kind of cowboy story, and they're in an old West town. Who's the actor? Kind of a semi-famous actor is in it with Chris Cornell, and they're on the gallows, about to get, the noose around the neck and all that, and obviously after he passed away, and the way in which he passed away, that was a little bit too much, and so I guess the family or whoever requested, or maybe just YouTube themselves, took it down. And I don't think you can find it at all on YouTube nowadays. I'm sure you can find it somewhere, maybe on like Vimeo, one of those, or Daily Motion, they might have it. But that song is a brilliant song, and if you listen to that song, one would assume that he's talking about his wife there. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, the whole thing about Chris Cornell dying and his wife has not, the wife at the time of when he died, and not her role in that, because that sounds a bit conspiratorial. I'm not saying that, but I'd say that he wasn't happy in his marriage, obviously. And I think his wife was a bit of a fucking harpy, to be honest. And then subsequently after his death, or the way that she held up the recordings and like wouldn't let the band access to them. I'm sure there are issues there of legalities and things like that. It's not like a black and white thing. Chris was the main songwriter by this stage of Soundgarden. And so the recordings that he had, you can't just go, here you go. But at the same time, they were, from what I've heard, Soundgarden recordings that the band knew about and had written music for. Like they'd already demoed stuff for it, and he had them, and they were singing them back and forth, and she just wouldn't hand them over. There's other things I could say about that, but anyway, I'm happy to have that for $1. Next, this is something I was very surprised to find, because you almost never find Beatles albums. The only Beatles album thing you rarely find is the number one, compilation that was released in about 2000, the Beatle ones. And sometimes, I've also seen the red and blue compilation, the double disc one. That's, probably the most famous compilation of theirs. But actual Beatles albums, I got Sgt. Pepper's, didn't I? I bought that. I found that secondhand about 4 years ago for 50 cents. But anyway, I got this today. Help, which isn't the greatest album of theirs, to be honest, but it's still a Beatles album, and they're hard to find, and I'm happy to have it. And I especially like this little price label. Obviously bought in Britain, the UK, because it's pounds. Sterling, £6.25 at Martin McColl. I have no idea what Martin McColl is. I assume it's a music store, or was. Be very surprised if it still exists. Now, when was this reissued or pressed to a CD? Obviously 65 originally. Nothing here saying the... I wonder what country. Because there's been talk of the dreaded, was it called CD rot? And apparently there's one pressing factory in the UK that is notorious for their CDs progressing to CD rot eventually. And there was something about the way that they pressed them or produced them or whatever that made them more susceptible to that. This looks fine. See little smudges on it, but nothing. A couple of scratches there as well. Quite big scratches actually, but I'm sure it plays fine because I've got things that are much more scratched than that play fine. What year does I'm always interested in what year the CD itself was put out. You know, like in the 90s, obviously all the record companies went on this tear of reissuing everything on CD and making millions and millions and millions of dollars in the process. Ringo, Georgie, Paul, and Jan. So it helped the night before. You've got to hide your love away. I need you. It's just amazing looking at any Beatles album, just the amount of classics there are throughout the whole thing. Yesterday. Unless otherwise stated, lead guitar is George Harrison. Songs from the film Help. Produced by George Martin, the fifth Beatle. If he does say so himself. No. So very happy to have that. And lastly, a Willie Nelson's Greatest Hits compilation. Willie Nelson's Greatest Hits and Some That Will Be. This was originally $9.10. I got it for $1. I'm not sure where that label doesn't look familiar. And $9.10 seems like a strange price because, you know, and now it's $9.99. Got a discount. $9.10, $9.99. What do they consider Willie Nelson's greatest hits? Railway Lady, Heartaches, Blue Eyes, Crying in the Rain, Georgia on My Mind. There's a lot of songs on there. A lot of his songs that I would consider greatest hits aren't on here. Like City of New Orleans, Blue Skies, that song. Unless I'm messing them, I can't see them. There's On the Road. I was about to say On the Road Again. On the Road Again. I guess he's got so many songs, it's such a long career that it's hard to kind of whittle it down into a... When was this put out? 92, I think it says there. Which would make sense. So, what's that? How many? 1, 2, 6 CDs for $6. And the other shop, I said there were two other ones I was going to buy. The other one was the Hook movie soundtrack. You know, Hook, the movie by Steven Spielberg in 1990-ish, 91, with Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook and Robin Williams as Peter Pan. They had the soundtrack of that, and the soundtrack of that is done by John Williams. I was very close to buying that. That was $1 as well. That was at another shop, and they had a soundtrack compilation type thing that I couldn't see what were the commonalities between the songs they chose, but I was almost going to buy that as well, but I didn't. So those ones I was kind of half and half, and I was like, These ones, I was all of them. Yes, immediately. So that's why I got them. So let's carry on with the list as I've been doing for now 3 days. Today is the 8th, so let's turn over. Keep saying I'm going to rewrite this in a neat way, but I'll get to it eventually. 8th to the 1st, which is a Wednesday. Now I'm going to list them all. So I went to Red Cross. There was a shop called Salt. That was the name of the secondhand shop. It was like a youth educational program charity shop. Hospice. This one was quite funny. St. Chad's. Who would have guessed there's a saint called St. Chad? Chad is not really, Chad sounds like one of those modern names like Chuck or Spike or Buddy. Saint Buddy. But apparently it's not, so it's an old name. Chadwick, maybe it's attached to a church, to St. Chad's Church itself, kind of out the back, connected. They have their own little charity shop. So I went to those 4. These all were in Orewa, which is north of Auckland, about 25 minutes. And then I went down to Whangaparoa, which is kind of next to Orewa, and I went to a Salvation Army store, another hospice store, a Restore, which is Habitat for Humanity, Restore, a St. Stephen's store. Don't know what St. Stephen's, what their charity target is, but there's one called St. Stephen's. Then the last one's the SPCA store. So is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yes, that's all. And all of these were in Whangaparoa. All of these ones I got nothing. Those 4, nothing. And then at Salvation Army, I got the Beatles, Akadaka, Chris Cornell, and Willie Nelson. Times 3, and that was $6. So 7 to 8 days into the new year, I've spent 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, $11, and I have 11 CDs because so far all of the CDs have been $1 each. Yeah, and I've covered pretty much the whole of the northern region of my city. I think I said yesterday, there's a few other places very nearby where I live, but I go to those places so often I can go to them anytime, so I don't really need to include them in this hunt. Anyway, so yeah, I'm happy with those finds. Yeah, what else can I say? Even though it's summer here, the weather's been a bit strange, quite cloudy today. It's not really been hot, which is good because I don't like hot weather, but it's been very windy. And it was even snowing, not here, but in the middle of the North Island. There's kind of an area we call the Central Plateau, where there's a bunch of volcanoes. And because it's a plateau, it gets snow more readily, but it doesn't snow in the summer, but it did snow the other day, which is quite bizarre. So it's been a strange summer, and stranger still because my family aren't here, so it's all kind of discombobulated. But anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Tomorrow we carry on. I'll be crossing the bridge tomorrow to the other side of Auckland. I'm not sure which part exactly, but somewhere. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you later.